at Romans 5:8. But God commendeth his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And I realized that is what good would do. Good would become evil so that evil could become good. Jesus Christ, the good one, took my evil and so that I could become good. And that day, the Sunday before Easter, 1969, at the age of 9, I accepted Jesus Christ, the one who became my evil, so that I could become the Son of God. Now that becomes important for more than just that reason. Because several years later, in 8th grade, I would begin the second difficult time of my life, preparing me for what he had ahead. I was a science kid. Always was. I loved everything to do with science, everything to do with the outdoors. I had a leaf collection, I had a bark collection, I had a branch collection, I had a bird collection, I had an egg collection, I had a nest collection. I had 36 hobbies and collections by the time I graduated from high school. A couple of them were kind of normal, stamps and coins, but the rest were those kinds of things, okay? Telescope, microscope, the whole bit. My whole life, I couldn't do sports, I couldn't sing, I couldn't do anything that was of any significance to anybody around me, that was of any value whatsoever. I love science. That was my whole life. And wouldn't you know it, and this is weird, it's weird to me now, even looking back on it. I went to this school that had K through 8 in one school out in the country, and the culminating event, the big event, the one that when you went through this, you became a real person and went on to high school. This was a huge thing. We knew about it from, obviously from kindergarten on. We looked forward to this 8th grade big event, and for reasons that I know not to, even to this day, the big event they chose to be the person-making event was a science fair. For most people, that was a yawner. For me, that was exciting. This is cool. I mean, I was planning in 7th grade how to do this. And I had to choose my topic carefully. I needed a topic that would incorporate as many of my hobbies and collections and interests as possible. Something grandiose, something big, something exciting. And I decided on evolution. Because evolution, in one way or another, could really incorporate most everything. Got my dad to help me build a stair-step kind of thing that represented time, and I memorized at that time the Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian, the geologic time scale. I made the run on each of the steps proportional to the length of time of that particular period, and each step represented the period, and I was able to put on there the fossils that I'd collected in that particular time period, and models of dinosaurs, and all of this sort of thing. Years later, I would run into a fellow classmate of mine from that period, and she would introduce me to her 8th grade daughter. It's awful when that happens. But anyway, she said, "This is the guy I was telling you about." Thinking, what'd she tell her? This is the, and she proceeded, remember the one I said that we had the science fair, and he had half of the room and everyone else had the other half of the room? I don't remember it that way, but anyway, it was a big project. And it was at the end of the year, and the day finally came for the science fair event. Now, that day, we had no class. The 8th grade had no class. We were preparing all day for the event that evening. Some of my classmates were just beginning on their project in order to finish it that evening. And others, I need to tell you about Carl. My friend Carl. Carl had chosen as his science fair project something that nobody chooses for a science fair project. I mean, this is so unusual. He decided to make a volcano. And he had a, no, that's not the way to describe it. Dry run, definitely not the way to describe this. He had an initial test run of his volcano 3 weeks before the event. 3 days later, after we'd replaced the desk, replaced the tiles in the ceiling, and cleaned the room, and so on and so forth, I'll never forget this. Poor little Carl. Carl's the shortest kid in the class. He's just slightly shorter than I. And he's sitting there timidly in his class, in his desk, and the teacher walked right up to the opposite side of his desk, looked straight down at Carl, and says, "You will not do a volcano." So Carl couldn't do his volcano. So what he did is he joined me in my evolution project. And we had together gone to the school library and gotten every book they had on evolution, read both of those. And we went to the big city of Rochelle, Illinois, and went to the public library and took out every single book they had on evolution and read both of those. And we put everything we had into this project. So we were experts on evolutionary theory. Again, the day comes for the event, and we're done. As I said, many of the others were just beginning their projects and flurrying about and busy, and Carl and I didn't have anything to do. And I sat down at a desk with Carl, and I said, "Carl, I've got a problem." And he says, "What's that?" He says, I can't reconcile what we've just done to the Bible." He says, "Well, what do you mean?" And I turned to Genesis chapter 1, and I sat there and read it out loud to him. And he said, yeah, I see. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be the same as what we've just done here. And so I thought about it there for a moment, and then I had an epiphany. Said, "Nobody's ever come up with this idea. I ought to publish it. What if," and I said this out loud to Carl, "what if the days in Genesis are actually millions of years long? That might get rid of the problem, might reconcile the problem here." Carl says, "Oh, that's pretty neat. Yeah, I think that'll work." Now, in the back of my mind, I knew that didn't quite work, because the order isn't right. I mean, the Bible says that the earth comes before the sun. That's not the evolutionary order. The sun comes before the earth. The Bible says that the plants come before the sea creatures. But in evolution, the sea creatures come before the plants. And the Bible says that the flying creatures come before the land creatures, but evolution says the land creatures evolved into the flying creatures. So there were some problems, but it solved most of them. 95% of the problems, so it's okay, right? It's close enough. And I stuffed those problems into the back of my brain and put it into a room and locked the door and put about 6 locks on it. Said, "That's not going to bother me. That's not going to bother me. That's not going to bother me. It's bothering me. It's not going to bother me." And for 2 years, I kept that door locked. But I'm an obsessive compulsive. I'm a perfectionist. I couldn't. It bothered me. As much as I didn't want it to, it still bothered me. So, in my sophomore year of high school, I snuck out, don't tell anyone, I snuck out of high school and went and bought a Bible, snuck back into high school. You say, it isn't that in Rochelle, Illinois, it was not legal to buy Bibles or something like that. It was what I was going to do to the Bible that scared me. As I took that Bible home that night, and I crawled into my sleeping bag. I'd learned years before that it's easier to make your bed if you make your bed, put your sleeping bag on top, and sleep in your sleeping bag. And so I get in my sleeping bag with a You mean you didn't do that? With a pair of scissors, my new Bible, and a flashlight. Now the question that I was now going to address, it's going to take me now a year and a half to completely address, is if evolution is true, how much of the Bible do I have to throw out? If evolution is true, how much of the Bible will I have to throw out? And being a rather concrete sort of person, I decided the best way to do that was to actually cut the verses out of the Bible that I would have to cut out if, in fact, evolution were true. And that would tell me what kind of an impact that would have on the Bible. Now, that's why I was afraid of getting this Bible and letting anybody know and doing it at night and in the sleeping bag, and so Mom and Dad didn't know and all of this sort of thing. Now, I had looked for a Bible that was only printed on one side of the page. This would be so advantageous, wouldn't it? You could put notes on the other side and this sort of thing. But unfortunately, the only Bible I could find was printed on both sides. So if I'm going to cut out a verse on one side, it's going to cut out the verse on the other side. So I decided that I would cut out every other verse. So I'd read both sides and then go back and cut out every other verse. That seem fair? Now I cheated a little bit because the Bible had a little bit of white space around the outside. It had a little bit of white space going down the middle between the verses and that sort of thing. And so rather than cut from the outside of the page, I would poke the verse with the scissors. It's very violent. And carefully cut the verse out, leaving the margins and all of this sort of thing. This is going to be in my favor later on. It's very carefully. So what I did is then begin at Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and read it. If I had to throw it out, if evolution was true, I cut it out. And I then proceeded, Genesis 1, Genesis 2, Genesis 3, and so on and so forth, systematically going through the whole Bible. Now, it was quite clear where this was going long before I got very far in this process. But two things. I'm an obsessive compulsive, and I'm a perfectionist. I got to finish the job. But there was one more important thing. See, the issue is evolution true or is the Bible true? Now, for me, the way I was trained, evolution was equivalent to, intertwined with, and I've already explained why, with everything I loved, with all of science. So really the issue is science true or is the Bible true? That was the issue before me. And my problem was I didn't want to reject that which I loved. And so I didn't stop before I got to the end because I was hoping there was a way out, that I didn't have to make a choice between everything I loved and the Bible. But, and it took me a year and a half. Late in my junior year of high school, I got to Romans 22:19. And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life, and out of the holy city, and from the things that are written in this book. That was the scariest cutting of the verse that I ever did. But I had to get rid of it. The day had finally come. I was in the last chapter of the last book of the Bible, of the Holy Bible. I carefully took the cover off of the Bible and laid it there on my bed.